was such a good video. Oh man, Space Marine 2 is a reminder of what we lost.
Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2 oozes with so much masculinity that I feel like I've been in a desert for the last few years.
That's fucking exactly. Yep, abso-fucking-lutely. Because remember, I played Metal Gear Solid Revengeance. I'm like, or Metal Gear Rising. I was like, I forgot what it was like to be the target audience. I totally forgot. And it reminded me. And then I played Space Marine 2, and it was like, yeah.
It has themes that nobody wants to go near anymore. For courage and honor, for brotherhood, for the Emperor.
Yep.
It's so good. It's such a fun game. But the entire time while I was playing it, I couldn't help but shake this feeling of nostalgia. Like, the game reminds me of something I've lost, something that we have lost.
Well, it's also the integrity and authenticity. I think that's another really big component that games used to have, that now it feels like it's very inauthentic.
You know, I used to play a lot of games. I still play a lot of games, but I used to play a lot more. Games were far more consumable. You pick it up, I could put it down, I could enjoy it for a while, I could play it with my friends, and I could leave it and not feel guilty for doing so.
Yeah.
But we've gotten away from that. Space Marine 2 is one of those games. I picked it up, I've played it, I've enjoyed it, I've played it with some friends, I plan on playing more of it and doing some of the co-op and the PvE and all that good stuff, but
it doesn't have annoying fucking systems. It doesn't have daily quests as far as I know. It doesn't have a lot of like really weird shit. It just has an in-game system that plays well that you can do and advance your character. Like, and I think that a lot of people are tired of endless grinds, pointless cosmetics, like bullshit, you know, no swipe for cosmetics. Yeah. Like, especially the swiping for progression shit. Like, if a game has that, I will still play it, but I won't take it seriously and I won't care about it. There's no FOMO. It doesn't got season pass. I don't know if it has a season pass or not. I have no idea.
Exact same time, I'm not committed to it. I can walk away at any moment. And while you may say that's true for other games, I think that we've lost that feeling. And I want to talk about that. I want to talk about my experience playing Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2, but I want to talk about what we've lost. The middle ground. I love Space Marine 2. I love it so much that I've now spent hours upon hours watching lore videos from Bricky and Wes Hammer on YouTube. I think the game is so good that, while it's not going to be as widespread, it's going to have a similar impact as Baldur's Gate 3 did on Dungeons & Dragons. A well-crafted, well-delivered experience in a universe that you know little about, that's going to drive you to want to know more about it, to have context behind what you've seen, or to answer questions you have and push you to find more experiences to enjoy.
I think that one of the really big components to this that really says a lot is that some of the criticism of Space Marine 2 that I find to be incredibly valid is that there isn't enough of it. Like, there isn't a lot of variety of gameplay. Because if you actually look at like what the core gameplay is and how the game plays, I think that a lot of people really like this game. I think Space Marine 2 is also taking the role that Gears of War used to have. Like, basically, the people that were, like, I don't know about you guys, how many of y'all played Gears 1 through 3, and you also played Space Marine 2? And you were like, yeah. Absolutely, right? 100%.
Space Marine 2 is an improvement over its predecessor, but...
So it's the same thing I said with Dragon's Dogma 2, is that an indicator of a good game is that the primary criticism of the game is that there isn't more of it.
If you've played that game or not, it's a great introduction to the 40k universe. It's grotesque and ugly, yet beautiful and fascinating. It's merging of man and machine, fantasy and reality on a scale that leaves you awestruck. Scale. Now that's a word this game embodies. I cannot tell you how many times I slow walked through areas, panning the camera around, drinking in the scale and brutality of war.
Because it's awesome. It looks really cool. I mean, that's really all there is to it. Like, this is basically like, and what you guys need to remember is that this used to be StarCraft. Like, StarCraft used to have this same vibe, and then they decided to basically, well, stop making StarCraft. The game has weight? Yeah, yeah, it feels like you're moving around in like this massive suit of armor, etc. Yeah. Gears
Sheer
of War
number
2?
of
Yeah.
enemies, the warring factions in the distance. It made it an experience that could only be described as a meat grinder. Countless waves of Astra Militarum thrown against unrelenting hordes of Tyranids.
And I feel like it's also really well designed in a way that like Helldivers 2 was really well designed, in that you always feel like, I don't know about you guys, maybe it's just because I suck, but I always feel like I'm hanging on by a thread. Like, I'm always one hit. I'm always no armor, half health. Like, I'm always barely hanging on. And it feels like it's very gripping in that way. It's always a spectacle. Yeah. You're fighting for your fucking life.
Like
exactly.
Disposable distractions while we Space Marines cut through them like a hot knife through butter. So many games want to be big rather than feel big. And Space Marine 2 feels larger than life. The narrative and the atmosphere of this game are immaculate. Saber Interactive have made one of, if not the best adaptations of Warhammer 40K.
Well, it's also like the characters in the game, and I'm sure he'll talk about this more, but like I have to say that like the characters in this game are phenomenal. And one of the reasons why is that they're all flawed. Like, for example, Gadriel is, you know, like very untrusting and he's uncertain. But if you look at it from his perspective, it makes sense why he's untrusting. Chiron, like, gets upset. He got really mad at the Chaos Space Marines. And then, you know, like, every character is flawed, but they accept their responsibility and duty, and they try to work beyond that, right? So, like, they have a disagreement, and then they go and they just keep moving forward. You know, they have flawed protagonist. Oh, it's a flawed protagonist that's flawed in a way that isn't self-indulgent and annoying. Like, basically, it's real shit. Yeah, exactly. And, like, the thing is, like, Chiron and Gadriel, they had good points. They were. It's not like, and it wasn't painted as if, like, this was a one-dimensional thing at all. Like, Anduin's, yeah, they were well-written, interesting characters that had, like, their own motives and, like, goals. It's a sign of good writing. Yeah, exactly. Gadriel was a bit fanatical, though. I don't think he was. I think that what he said made sense. Like, oh, yeah, we have this new guy that's coming on board. This guy's been around for 200 years. There's nothing in his past. Like, who the fuck is this guy? Why is he our leader now? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it wasn't fanatical at all. Yeah, I think Chiron was more fanatical. Absolutely. And also, like, here's another good example. Look at that, and look how fucking badass that is, and compare that to Khadgar's blue bitch boy wheelchair in World of Warcraft. And you want to know what's really funny about this? Is that at the end of the story, like, they had to, like, each one of them had to, like, turn something using their hands. Guess who had the least trouble doing it? Fucking Chiron. You know why? Because he's got a robot fucking arm. That's the reason. And it was like, yeah. And like, I didn't even really notice it. Spoiler? Oh, no, that's not a spoiler. That's just what it was. And so, yeah, it's like, it's a representation of, like, disability and any sort of, like, diversity in a way that's completely positive, and it enhances the story and makes it better.
On the battle barge, the ships and weapons, the character adaptations, roles within ranks, how characters interact with one another, the scale of war in the background, the blood, the viscera, the music, and the voice acting, all of it is near perfect. From a visual and audio perspective, I felt like I was in this war and in this universe. I took every chance I could to listen to audio logs or eavesdrop on passing conversations, speeches, and sermons, all of them, because I was starving for the next bit of lore to add to my experience, and I think that's a byproduct of the main cast of characters' performances, or, in the case of Space Marine 2, the lack thereof.
Yeah.
Titus and company are not the most talkative bunch, and they shouldn't be. They're Marines. It's all about the mission and killing their enemies and serving the Emperor, not their personal thoughts, opinions, or feelings. Over the last few years, it
Well,
feels like
I think that also, like, they do share their personal thoughts, opinions, and feelings for like 3 seconds, and then it's like, yeah, I don't know about this one, Captain. He's like, yep, we'll talk about it later. All right, you ready? They're like, yes, for the Emperor. And that was it. It's not the fact that they don't talk about it, it's the fact that they don't indulge in it.
every modern game and television show or movie, they're all allergic to stoicism. They can't allow characters to be silent. They need a character to be complicated, to have feelings, and to need to talk about those feelings because
I love the allergic to stoicism component. I do. I love that. Holy fuck, is it true? Absolutely.
they don't know how to tell a great story without words. I can't help but feel if this game came out from a major AAA studio, Titus would have multiple monologues in front of a mirror backed by a licensed My Chemical Romance soundtrack. Brother Gadriel would be the comic relief, and Chiron would be the true villain all along, but don't worry, he's not that bad. He's just fighting the system that separated him and his sister because, well, they wouldn't allow her to carry out her dream of being a space marine, and now he's vowed to tear down the system. Cut to a scene of him dying in Titus's arms in the rain, Titus crying out, wishing the world was different. That's one of the first things that I noticed.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's a good way to say it. Modern writing, it is. It's so self-indulgent. It was so fitting. Yeah, how does he know?
Is that it was simple characters, simple story. Even in cutscenes, there really wasn't a lot of dialogue. There was no long...
somebody, yeah, good point. You forget the millennial quips. You know, like epic win and, you know, I can't even imagine what they could do in 40K that would sound cringe. I can't imagine it, but I'm sure they could invent something. Yeah, the constant humor. Yeah. Serious situation happens and there's some sort of like comic relief for it.
On out exposition or anything of that nature. Even in the scenes where characters were showing some doubts or suspicions of Titus, it was all drowned out almost immediately.
It was.
Because think about it. Thoughts, opinions, feelings, this stuff is heresy. These are space marines.
Yeah.
Any humanity they have is buried under 2,000 pounds of armor, genetic enhancements and manipulation, body enhancements, and, well, faith in the Emperor.
Most importantly.
Over the last few years, games have really dove into this idea of telling simple stories through complex characters. There's no such thing as just a regular villain anymore. All of them are...
The problem is not that they have complex characters. The problem is that their idea of a complex character is a self-indulgent loser that doesn't have any charisma. That's the reason why. Like, I remember, like, I had to read the Catcher in the Rye, and I hated that book so much. And I feel like the reason why I hated the book is because I thought the main character, like Holden Caulfield or whatever, was the biggest simp, loser, pussy bitch that I had ever, like, it's just such a loser. Like, and that's it, Holden's a piece of shit. Yeah, he's a loser bitch. And I don't want to read that. I don't want to see that. And I bet the people that fucking write stuff like, you know, Dustborn or whatever, they love that. They think that's great. Me too, it was so bad. Yeah, it's so unlikable.
Victim of circumstance more than anything else. They have tragic backstories that we need to feel and we need to empathize over, rather than just being a bad guy and good guys being good guys. Though, to be honest, in Warhammer, I mean, everybody's kind of an asshole, so it doesn't really matter that much.
It's that everything is presented in a way that has too much of a direct correlation to real-life social issues. I think that's something else that people know the world's black and white. Well, I think also, like, having complex characters is a good thing, and some of the best characters are always complex characters. However, the complexity falls apart when it's being done by a person who doesn't understand what actual, like, I don't know how to say this. Like, you can't write cool characters if you're not cool. And I don't think that the people that are writing a lot of the new characters and stories now are very cool. I think they're not interesting. They're kind of boring. And they just don't really have a lot of interesting insight into how to make a character interesting. Yeah, no flaws. I don't know. Talentless freaks. Well, self-indulgent. Yeah, I think that's in my opinion the worst part of it is the self-indulgence.
But it's just gotten to the point now where they think that they're trying to do something theatric, but in the end, all they're doing is giving stories that are uninspired and completely predictable. They're doing the same as everybody else is doing. Space Marine,
it's like how many games recently have had like a story where it was the good guys that were actually bad and the bad guys that were actually good. And there's like always like some sort of like, I'm thinking of Diablo 4 primarily. And there's always some sort of like parallel to like Christianity or like some sort of like church. I find it to be very, very just exhausting to see this same trope be used over and over. It's like, okay, your parents made you go to church whenever you were a kid. Do we have to relive this trauma with you too? Come on. It's lazy and lame. Yeah, it's so heavy-handed.
2 is a game of few words.
Try to make the Jedi bad guys. Yeah, exactly.
And it feels damn fun to play. I love making reviews like this because it gives me the opportunity to help my viewers get to know me a little bit better. So I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. I love third-person shooters. I love the perspective, the aiming, the way it makes melee combat look and feel. I have thousands of hours across the entire Gears of War franchise, especially Gears of War 1, Canals and Mansion were my MLG-level slaughterhouse. Space Marine 2 takes me back to those days.
Yeah.
The chaos of the overwhelming enemy numbers, the gore on screen at every moment, the slow and methodical movement and firing.
That's also another really big component that this game doesn't have, is that it's not designed to be played like an MLG quick-scoping game. And I think that's something that a lot of like average players are kind of like getting exhausted from. Is that like every time a new video game comes out, like I'll give you a good example of this, like on Twitter. And so, let me see if I can find it. This is something I saw earlier. I think it was like yesterday. DS4 plus Windows plus new buff Black Ops. Movement is making 9 to 5 old heads rage. They think I'm cheating. 9 to 5 old heads. Watch the way this person is playing. That means people that have jobs. Right. Bro, I'm gonna get car sick. Yep, this looks retarded. What I'm saying is, like, the people like this, what they do is they increase the skill cap for the game massively, and they contrive the meta for the design of the game in that direction. And games like Space Marine don't have that problem as much because of how much slower they are. So what ends up happening is that, like, you have these games that become, like, super hardcore, super fast. And when you have that happen, so much unnecessary movement, yeah, they're trying to make COD Apex. Exactly, yeah, literally, wow. Yeah, there's a huge skill gap now. And so now people don't experience and they can't play the game with each other in the same way.
Make you feel
Kills
like
the
you're
fun.
a
It does.
bipedal tank. Firing weapons, using grenades, jumping in the air and slamming down on enemies. It all felt incredible. I still remember the wave of third-person shooters back in the late and early 2000s when it was a fad for developers, but it was a fad because players loved it. And I think the reason why we loved it so much is just because we could see that much more. First-person perspectives are restrictive, limited, and tunnel-visioned. In third person, you can take in all of your surroundings, react to what's happening next to you or behind you.
My opinion is, like, between first person and third person, I think that there's advantages and disadvantages to each one. I do. I mean, I kind of like third person more in a way, but there's things that I don't like about it. Yeah, I mean, I really couldn't say that I really agree or disagree with this. Yeah.
In the immensity of the game, all the while playing it more tactically. In games like Space Marine 2 or Gears of War, I feel like I'm playing chess with a mobile wood chipper.
Yeah.
I'm shooting an enemy. I'm pushing forward. I'm going to execute this one, turn around, throw a grenade over here, switch my weapons, use melee on this group, switch back to melee, pick up that ammo over there.
One thing that it reminds me of is like, so I always really, really, really like the combat of Dark Souls 1. And the reason why is that it played so slow and it was so methodical. And it's the same reason why I like the combat in like Dragon's Dogma and I like the combat in Monster Hunter, especially with like the Greatsword, is that everything felt very slow and methodical and planned. And I think that obviously it doesn't feel like there's that big of a skill gap, even if there is. And like you can watch somebody play Monster Hunter who's like, you know, really, really good at it. You'd realize like, wow, there's a big skill gap here. I'm actually garbage. But at the same time, a person can still feel good about playing the game, even if they don't have like a very high level of skill, because you do occasionally get those big hits. It's got more weight to it. Exactly. Yeah, it does. And it's not hyper fast, hyper reaction based and everything.
And then move to the final group. Every combat scenario feels like a dance of death and carnage as I carve my way through every enemy encounter and reach my goal.
Yeah.
My only real criticism of the game is that the dodge and parry mechanics, as well as ally NPC AI, seem to completely interrupt that flow. While I understood the goal that they were going for,
I don't really like the parry mechanic in this game. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And like, I feel like parries interact differently with each other. Like the same types of mobs do different parries. So yeah, I'm not really a big fan of it either. Skill issue? Well, yeah, I mean, as I get better at the game, I would understand it more. But I just feel like it's harder to understand, and it doesn't really make sense because like there's different parry timings for each one.
Or the combat.
It's better in operations. We unlock fencing weapons. Yeah,
I really enjoyed parrying small enemies that were about to jump on me. It was really satisfying to see me kill them. But some markers would show while others wouldn't.
Right.
And since there isn't any animation canceling on higher difficulties, any mistakes that you make are punished heavily.
Yeah, you're
accidentally parrying when you need to dodge. Even if there's enough time for you to be able to react to your mistake before the enemy's attack resolves, you won't be able to because you're still in the animation of parrying or using a melee.
Yep.
This wouldn't be as taxing if the ally NPC...
Which is a good thing, by the way, because it makes it more methodical.
The AI was moderately helpful, but I always find them shooting at enemies that haven't even hit the battlefield yet. They're completely useless when you're defending objectives. They stand still after they stun an enemy, and ultimately they serve as no distraction or help when you're being attacked.
I'm gonna be honest. I was down bad so much playing this game, I didn't even notice the AI. I didn't even know what they were doing because I was like one hit from death, trying desperately to stay alive. I didn't even notice them.
Attacked by vast waves of enemies. I say I know what they were going for here because, one, you're a space marine, not an acrobat, and two, the game is obviously tuned for multiplayer and not single player. Once you have one or two friends in the group, the game transforms. The pace evens out. Any major issues that you have seem to disappear immediately. I'm reminded of the times back from 2004 to 2010 where you would go out to buy games specifically just to play with friends. Army of Two, Kane and Lynch, Halo, Gears of War, Resident Evil 5, The Club. These social co-op experiences that are best enjoyed either on the couch or online with friends or coworkers.
Yeah, I think Halo campaign is probably the best example of that for me. Like, I remember growing up, playing the Halo campaign was huge.
My friend hop in and play.
Yeah, I loved it.
Played a game like this in a really long time, and it was like nothing changed. We bantered back and forth, making fun of one another, broing out over cutscenes, communicating strategies, and jokingly role-playing as we cut through waves of enemies. This is one of the reasons why I believe Helldivers 2 blew up when it did, because so many games are competitive now. Hell,
well, it captures an aesthetic, and it captures a vibe, and I think that, again, like in the same way that a Star Wars Outlaw had, like, negative aura, I think Helldivers and Space Marine 2 have positive aura. And that aura attracts people because the environment just feels fun.
Almost all of media is so polarized and oppositional that you can't even escape it in the first place. And as such, I think it's starting to begin this growing hunger within players and within consumers where they want things that are a little bit more leaning into the side of community and camaraderie more than anything else, because you're not really finding that anywhere else. I think this is...
Well, a lot of people, like, you have to keep in mind that a lot of people that are playing online multiplayer games want to have social experiences. That's why they're playing an online multiplayer game. So if you have a game that's an online multiplayer game and it doesn't create a sense of camaraderie and a sense of shared space, why is it an online multiplayer game? What's the point?
By and large, in part due to AAA's push into live service. They all want to make their money printing machine, and we all know that competitive games seem to be the best at doing that. But with that said, I just really haven't seen a lot of games that have done anything like this over the last few years. And more games are getting away from this cooperative nature and cooperative play. I mean, think about it. Halo 5 and Halo Infinite didn't even have couch co-op or split screen. Halo, of all games. Mind you, that's 343, and that's a whole other problem in and of itself. But
I don't know how Microsoft hasn't fired that whole studio. I'm sorry. How is it that you can take the flagship product, Halo, like that? They literally named their AI assistant Cortana. Halo is Xbox. How do you let someone make 3 bad games? They can't keep getting away with it? Yes.
With that said, Space Marine 2 just feels like a pure video game. Unpolluted. There's no drawn-out exposition. It's not trying to put me on long grinds or chases or anything like that. It's just calling back to something that I think that we've lost and we haven't had for a long time. And
it feels like a game that came out in 2010.
Just good, dumb fun.
Yep.
That's it. Space Marine 2 isn't trying to do anything that hasn't been done. It's just a simple and fun video game. Well, there are definitely some examples in recent memory. I can't help but shake the feeling that we just don't get a whole lot of games like this anymore. Sure, part of it's likely due to the industry's overwhelming push into live service, a trend that I think is being bucked by the most successful games over the past few years.
Well, also, like, there are live service components of Space Marine 2, and that's a good thing because people like the multiplayer. My criticism for the multiplayer is that I think that the missions take too long. I just think that, like, I would like if they were half the length that they are now, because I feel like each session time is just too long. But overall, I had fun playing the game.
It's been a long time since I've played a game that felt so consumable.
Yeah.
A game that once I started playing it, I never once thought of whether or not I'd actually have the time to finish it, how long it would take me to finish, if I would fall behind in content or forget mechanics if I walked away from it. It's just simple, dumb fun with no strings attached. I remember back in the
I do think that this will be something that over time will become a problem, because in the same way that, like, Helldivers 2 was really popular for a while because it was very simplistic, I think that Space Marine 2 will not have the same problem that Helldivers does, though, because it actually does have a progression system that is power-based. So, like, Helldivers 2 didn't have a power-based progression system, whereas this game does.
360 days of achievement hunting, how most games, AAA or not, were fun, memorable, and easy to consume. Def Jam Fight for New York, Burnout, Need for Speed Most Wanted, King Kong, Marvel Ultimate Alliance, The Darkness, Army of Two, Brutal Legend. None of these games were king of that era, but they were the supporting cast that made gaming feel so damn worthwhile at the time.
That's another good point that he's bringing up, is, like, every game wants to be your main game. And I think that's, like, a huge problem that, like, modern live service has, is that every game requires, like, a certain amount of time investment per week. And very few games offer, like, good catch-up mechanics and good mechanics to make players feel like they're not, like, falling behind whenever they aren't playing the game. Like, what happened to me a lot, and this is what's happened with a lot of live service games, is that as soon as I get out of the habit of playing them, I stay out of the habit of playing them. And I stay in the habit longer, and it's harder for me to get back into the habit of playing them because of, like, the FOMO, right? The FOMO acts as a barrier, but that barrier goes both ways. It's harder to get out of the game, but it's also harder to get back into it.
Well, yeah, there were,
because I know that I'm behind.
Fair share of garbage games. There were so many middle industry titles of little critical renown that were worth your money, and didn't make you feel like every single game that you needed to buy was the game. Sometimes it was good just to play a game.
Yeah.
One of my fondest memories back then was this little-known game called 50 Cent Blood in the Sand, where you played as 50 Cent and the G Unit. You played a concert in the Middle East where you were promised a $10 million diamond-encrusted skull upon completion. Some gang members steal it. Now you and the G Unit are on a mission to go get what's yours.
Absolute fucking cinema. There you go. Yep, there it is. The GOAT game, base game. Yeah, it's just funny, right? And I think that's another issue is that every game, and this is it's like the theater kid thing that like we were talking about the other day. It's that everybody thinks that they're able to make like their art and put their voice out there and write this like super complex, like nuanced story that everybody is going to respect and understand. And, you know, they're going to be seen for the artists that they are. It's like basically like the guy that made The Last of Us, the way that dude acts, like I think it's like Neil Druckmann or whatever. That exactly is, I think, what a lot of game developers, like, I think that they want to be, like, directors of movies. It's pretentious. Yeah, it's so fucking pretentious. It's obnoxious. Even though, and the weird thing is that a lot of the stories that are written by people, like, they're some of the least pretentious people, right? I mean, there's plenty of, like, great writers that were not like this at all. So it's just, again, theater kid behavior. That's what it is. Yeah, they want to be seen as an auteur. Yeah, exactly. They want to be seen as like an artist. They want to be like established and respected. Yeah, Hemingway. I was thinking Hemingway and Tolkien, right? Like those are my two examples. But yeah. It's ever since Scorsese made the comment that video games can't be seen like movies, developers have been trying to make games more cinematic to the point of actually hiring and mocapping actors. Well, I didn't know this, but actually motion capturing is really popular, and it's been popular for a really long period of time. But I think it's also the, the people that are making these games and writing these games want to be seen like Scorsese or like Steven Spielberg or Christopher Nolan or something like that. Whereas, the funny thing is about it is that, you know who's actually seen that way? Is Kojima. People see Kojima like that to a larger extent, I would say. And he doesn't act pretentious at all. He says goofy, and he doesn't need to take himself seriously. It's art, though. Yeah, it's just so weird. He's so weird. He's a weird guy. But that's what makes him a great artist. Or it definitely helps. Kojima cares about gameplay first, too? Yeah, exactly. He's the most pretentious? You think he's pretentious? I don't really think so. Yeah, I don't think so. It's not pretentious in a way that I find obnoxious, at least.
It was a stupid, funny third-person shooter that had no right being as fun as it was. It adapted mechanics from the club, where bonus objectives would randomly pop up, like blow up barrels or get X amount of headshots really or only use pistols, making you and your friend race to see who can achieve the goal first and rack up a higher score at the end of the run.
Well, it's the same thing about like Metal Gear Rising, where Raiden puts on a sombrero and a poncho, and he's going in like a manhole cover, and two, I guess, Mexicans see him, and he's like, adios, amigos, and he just goes down the fucking hole. What the fuck? But it's just funny. It's so good. Yes, it is.
Dumb fun. It didn't feel like a game that was being made by a studio that had everything riding on the line.
Yeah.
It came from a time where, as a player, I didn't feel like everything was riding on every purchase that I made. And I think that's one of the problems that we have today, that feeling of finality with every
by the way, this was one of my favorite parts of the campaign. Is like this giant dragon that was like this huge issue that like everybody, like, I was assuming this dragon was going to be the last boss of the game. And then the Dreadnought is like, in the name of the Emperor, I cast you down.
And I think that's one of the problems that we have.
It's dead. Okay. Nope. That's done.
That feeling of finality with every purchase. The sense that every single game has to be the one. And it comes from a shift in both the industry's approach and our view of what games are today. This constant
People want, but to be fair, and like this is something to be fair to game development companies, people want forever games. They want a game that they can invest 1,000 hours in and feel like they've actually not wasted their time. And I think that's the problem, is that people want these like massive, extensive, mass scope live service games, but the companies aren't willing to, like the companies can't deliver them at the rate that players want them.
Pressure that every game needs to be a massive
like,
hit.
and I think that like for WoW, right? Like people want that game that you played constantly. Like how many of you guys did it for Halo 2 or Gears 1 or Smash or like WoW? Like WoW is a big one, right? Like everybody had like their own like forever game. And I think that's what every developer is trying to do. I think what started it really was WoW for sure, but recently it's been Fortnite. I think Fortnite set the standard for what live service should be, and every developer has learned all the wrong lessons from it.
Of what games are today. This constant pressure that
It's crazy.
every game needs to be a massive hit. To have endless updates.
By the way, I'm a
to
huge
have
Fortnite fan.
something that demands long-term
See, watch.
commitment.
This is exactly
and
what I was
it's
saying.
led to this feeling. Developers now treat games like services, and players have been conditioned to believe that every purchase is an investment, rather than just a chance to have fun. It's exhausting. Somewhere along the way, we lost the middle ground. Those mid-tier games that weren't trying to be the biggest thing in gaming, but were good, fulfilling experiences that were worth our money.
I think another really good example of that are Enshrouded and Pow World. Both of those games were just pretty, pretty middle of the road, good games, like survival games. They were fun, they were honest, they were direct, and they were good. You like every single BR game? I like Fortnite. I think Fortnite is the most dynamic, even though I like, my favorite BR is PUBG. I don't know. I have a lot of opinions about BRs, but like anyway, like look at Core Keeper, for example. Core Keeper is the exact example of what he's talking about. This game is just a simple base game that's fun to play, and that's it, right? Like it's a good, fun game, and it is what it is. It doesn't need to be some kind of crazy, massive live service that you have to play regularly or anything like that. It's fun at its core. Guys, I just left the game on overnight a couple of days. Haven't put 71 hours into it, okay? Like I've not played it that much. Yeah, no, I just left the game on. No, the reason why I don't want you guys to think that is I only killed 3 bosses, right? So like imagine if I spent 71 hours and only killed 3 bosses. Like I'd be fucking garbage. So yeah, no, that's not the reason.
We need to get back to a time where we could simply play a game, we could buy it, play it, and walk away from it feeling satisfied. Not every purchase should feel like a commitment for life.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's good to just enjoy.
And like you see this with like people talking about video games now, especially live service games. People talk about their relationship with a video game like it's a person. They're like, yeah, I just had to stop. I couldn't control myself. I just, it just got toxic and I was logging on every day. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, you fucking freak? What? Just stop playing the game. It's like, I was like that with WoW for such a long time. And then as soon as I stopped playing WoW as like my job, I like not like literally as like a streamer, but I mean like just like in terms of like playing it with that mindset, my enjoyment of the game went up massively. Like I don't have any like real like I have negative sentiment. Like I'm not happy with the direction the game has gone in, but I'm not angry about it. I'm not mad. Like I'm like, okay, it's the same with Diablo 4. Like Diablo 4 has a patch and it's like not so good. It's like, oh, okay, I'll come back later, right? But every live service game, it's like they want you to feel like it's a fucking marriage. And I just don't think that's necessary. I really don't. WoW is not my game anymore? Yeah. When you stop being emotionally invested into a video game? Yeah. Your perspective changed? You don't want to give it all your time? Exactly. You're not as invested in it anymore? I know, and I think that's a good thing.
Thing for what it is, no strings attached.
Yep.
And, you know, from my perspective, Space Marine 2 is one of those games. I played it. I enjoyed it. I'm going to go back and play more with some friends, do some of the PvE.
Another really great example that's kind of recent is Grand Blue Fantasy Relink. That's another really great game I'd totally recommend that is just a good, solid game by itself.
And PvE content and stuff like that. But outside of that, I don't feel like I'm committed to this game. I
shitting
don't
on
feel
WoW.
like I'm locked down or married to it in any way. And I think that feeling is coming from the industry itself. I feel like the players, the consumers, can feel the pressure that these studios are exuding on their employees and exuding on these games. And it's because of their mismanagement of money. They're not investing the right way. They're putting way too much into one boat. And if that boat sinks, well, then the studio's done.
Well, it's not even that. It's that they're focusing on things that players don't care about. Like, they're focusing on the way graphics look. Like, there's a lot of things in Space Marine that could have been a lot better in terms of, like, just different types of designs, etc. But it doesn't really matter because the vibes of the game are very good and you feel good playing the game. And I think that's one of the really, like, actually, you know what? I think that matters a lot more than even what I'm saying. Because, yeah, when I play Space Marine 2, I feel good playing the game. When I play Star Wars Outlaw, I feel like I'm at work. Like, I stream every day because I love streaming. And I remember the day that I was streaming Star Wars Outlaws, I was thinking back to myself, is this what it feels like to have a job? Wait, so people have to do this 8 hours a day? And I'm like sitting there thinking about this fucking shit, and I'm losing my mind. Head and heads, yes. It was something, yeah, I'm like, is this, yeah, and I have to drive to this place just so I can sit here and play this game? It's nuts.
And
vibes matter a lot.
It shouldn't be that way. You know, I've seen a lot of people talking about game prices and how they need to go up again.
Yeah.
Talking about $100 and things like that. $70 is a lot of money. And I think that's also on the side of the players. We feel the pressure because we're spending so much money on these games in the first place. There's no flexibility there. I'm on the side asking for more flexibility. It's one of the reasons why I mostly buy indie and AA and single A games is because there's a lot of price flexibility there. Like more times than not, I end up getting a way better deal for the money that I spend. I spent like $15 on Core Keepers. I put like over 100 hours into it.
Yeah, I'm, you know, again, not at 70, actually. I'm probably at about like 20 or 30 hours at most into Core Keeper. And I definitely got way more money out of this game than I did out of Star Wars Outlaw. And out of many other AAA games as well. It's like a lot of games that play well don't necessarily have to be these AAA massive experiences. You played Dave the Diver? No, I watched S-Fan play it a lot, but I didn't play it myself. And 4 games for $70 when not AAA. Yeah, Astrobot. Like, I haven't played Astrobot yet, but I will. I'm trying to see if there's like another example of a game that's kind of like this. But I feel like in general, my experience is that I'm trying to think of a good way to put it. I think that big studios, their business model doesn't work unless you hit a home run. And I think that business model can't last because eventually you're going to have something that underperforms. And when you heavily invest this much into individual projects, you will eventually hit a speed bump and fall off.
I spent $5 on Terraria at one point.
Yeah.
I have like 1,200 hours in that. So I want to see more flexibility in experiences and in prices. And we just don't seem to have that as much as we used to.
Yeah.
I desperately want to go back to the days of junk food games, where even from some of these AAA studios, they would put out games that would be more like middle tier releases than anything else. And Space Marine 2 kind of feels like that. Don't take any offense to this. I know some people are going to be up in arms about it, but this doesn't feel like a Game of the Year candidate because it's not doing anything extravagant or incredible or different than anybody else other than the fact that it's using themes that apparently people are...
It has male characters in it, which is different than most other modern games nowadays. But other than that, yeah, he's right. In terms of game mechanics and gameplay, yeah, Space Marine isn't massively innovative or anything like that.
2 nowadays, but with that said, it's just a good game. It's just a damn good game, and that's it. and it's worth the money. I'm sick and tired of games that are coming out.
And you know what I'm sick and tired of? I'm sick and tired of people judging games based off of how long they played the game and the value. I hate that. Because what that does is that tells developers, oh, you want more collectibles. Okay. And it's like you loot something and it gives you an achievement and then it says 1 out of 500. And it's like,
feel like they need to be the game, that need to send a message, that need to change our minds, that need to tell these extravagant stories and do something that nobody's ever done before. Well, I do think there's a place for those games, and I still want to see those games. The problem is that almost every single game feels like it wants to be that game now. And there's just not enough room for it. Or creativity, for that matter. Yeah, I'm looking at you. You know who you are.
There's a lot of them.
Sorry, shouldn't have said that. Anyway, that's all I have for the video. I want more games like Space Marine 2. I want more jug food, and I'm not afraid to say it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys did, subscribe to the channel, like the video, share with your friends.
Yeah, he's right about all of this.
Follow me on Twitch. I'm trying to get to 10K followers. It's, you know, I got 100K here. Let's get a 10K there. Come on, man. Figure it out. Anyway, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, my friends, and hail the Emperor. Peace.
I could not agree more with this fucking video. I really, like, I'm gonna be honest, guys. I feel like, especially, I think that the allergic to stoicism thing, like, that just hit me so hard, because that's why Master Chief was so cool. It's like, he's a badass guy. He knows what the hell he's doing. He's smart. He's competent. He doesn't act like a pussy, etc. Right? So your piece of it, yeah, exactly, right? The silent MC, yeah, and it's all of this like self-indulgent emotional bullshit that's like so obnoxious. Like, yeah, give the video a like. This is, I completely fucking agree with this, and I hope to see more games like Space Marine 2. And I think that after the success of games like Space Marine 2 and also, what do you call it? What's the other one that's like that? Helldivers. I think that we will see games that really capitalize on that audience. And I think that you're always going to have like the negativity about how it's like toxic to do that or whatever. But at the end of the day, if a game sells copies, I think that's what's going to matter the most. Imagine if Space Marine 2 added LGBT colors or flag. I don't think people would really care about that. Like, people don't really care about the representation. They care about the attitude of the people that put in representation. Because usually representation in video games is something that comes naturally. Like, if you look at a lot of old video games and you look at, you know, for example, like go to EVO or go to like a gaming convention, you're going to see a lot of diversity there. You're going to see like how many of you guys played an online video game and, you know, your clan, your squad, your team was not comprised of all people that looked like you, right? Now, it might have all been guys, for example, but it could have been a guy from the Middle East, a black guy, a Hispanic guy, a guy from Brazil, some shit like that, right? Like anything. And so that's always been how it was. That's a good thing. It is. It's a very good thing. And that's normal. And so when you try to force something that happens naturally, the kinds of people that feel like they need to force it are the ones that understand it the least. And I think that's the problem that a lot of games have when they try to push like different types of like diversity stuff, is that they're the ones that understand it the least, and they're the ones that have the weirdest and most contrived views on it. I played Terra and my entire guild was on. Well, like in general, right? I mean, like, and you would get very used to this, woke YouTubers. Is Bellular woke? Oh, God. I'm not going to look at this right now. I think it's funny. And, yeah. Anyway, the gay character with an attitude, remember what they took from us? Yeah. And it's like, if you have characters that are like that, I think that it's just very, very exhausting. It is very exhausting because the people that push that kind of stuff are just simply not... They're just not interesting. They're not funny. They're boring, right? I hate the fucking flag. I don't care about, like... I mean, again, I don't think anybody actually cares about a lot of like representation. And what I mean by that, by anybody cares, is that I don't think that people have like a, let me think of, I want to figure out a way to say this. I don't think that people view it as a negative, but the people that try to push it make it seem like a negative. And I think that they do it in a way that's like self-aggrandizing, and it comes off as extremely inauthentic. So like whenever you see a character like, and this, I see this all the time. It's like, oh yeah, this is this super progressive developer that like added a black character into the game, and it's like special ability is that it runs fast, or it has some other like black stereotype. This is ridiculous. Like, how the fuck do you do this? And that's the problem. Bro, no, I mean, like, really? Like, literally. And by the way, that wasn't a random example. That was the Concord character. That was her special ability. Oh my god. Lighting poses, bro, what? Yes, it's just, it's weird, man. It's so fucking weird. Rabon in Final Fantasy 14 was a Giga Chad? Yeah. I care, it was straight up bullshit. They remember not like for gay people. By default, the little characters were all straight, and I like that game. I don't think people really care a lot about the people that care about sexualities of video game characters are not the people that are probably playing the characters or playing the games. They're mainly just people that are looking for a reason to complain or get mad. Video about best WoW features, every expansion. Well, I don't know. I'll look and see if there's anything else I was going to look at. Oh, I don't know if this is going to be any good, but I do want to watch this. Basically, a loud minority, which doesn't reflect in sales. Well, like, my point that I'm making is that I guess I'll say it. I'll say it. I think that a lot of the people that write characters like that don't actually interact with minorities at all in real life, and they probably grew up in like sheltered, privileged, upper middle class lifestyles. And so their ideas of minorities are stereotypes. And so the only way that they can understand interacting with minorities is through the inverse of the stereotypes that exist. So it's like you're basically, you don't have a lot of experience with like actual people of this group. So instead of that, you kind of create what you think a person from this group would act like. Does that make sense? It's out of touch. Yeah, that's the way I view it. Brainwashed by weird teachers in liberal colleges? No, I don't think that's the reason why. I think these are people that don't really have a lot of friends and are like kind of the Killmonger haircut, etc. Right? And it's like, I just, yeah, they watch too much TV. Yeah, they're like socially retarded, basically. Yeah. Which is how racism is born. Well, these people are racist. They just don't realize it.